my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my January 2024 reading wrap-up. It is the first monthly reading wrap-up of the year. It's been an interesting one in terms of quality, and we have a lot to get through today. The content warnings for all of them will be linked down below in the description, and let's go ahead and get into it. My first finished read of 2024 was actually a book that I started back in 2023, and that book was Blood Like Fate by Liselle Sambury, which is the sequel to Blood Like Magic. Blood Like Magic follows our main character who is given the task to sacrifice her first love in order to save her family's magic during her calling, which is a trial that every witch must pass in order to obtain their powers. I had some mixed feelings while I was reading this book, because while it was succeeding at the things that I wanted most from it, especially after book one, the main storyline just took way too long to get going for me. And it was really good once that actually happened, but the build up to it just felt like it dragged. And that's not to say that there weren't moments that I definitely did really love within the first 300 or so pages, because there were, and then there were also moments that I really appreciated in hindsight. Especially when it comes to the characters and their relationships with one another, everything related to that in any way was incredible and by far my favorite parts of the book. Not only this book actually, but also the entire duology. So I loved all of that, and I do think that this book has an amazing deep dive into grief, trying your best, and moving forward, even when things are hard, and even when relationships have been damaged. Overall, what I loved, I really loved. I just wish the structure of the story was different, and I ended up giving Blood Like Fate 3.75 out of 5 stars. We're going to go a little bit out of order here so that I can talk about both of these chapters at the same time, but next up is You and I Are Polar Opposites. I read chapters 47 and 48 this month over on the Manga Plus app. This is a manga series that I do tend to keep up with as it updates, and it is a romantic comedy that follows our energetic main character who falls for the quiet boy in her class. And yeah, this is one of my favorites, and now I get to talk about it, or at least mention it, every month because I finally started to keep a spreadsheet to keep track of all of the random manga chapters that I read throughout the year that I would usually just ignore on this channel. You and I Are Polar Opposites is a series that is filled with a lot of really adorable couples, characters, and friendships, with some really charming humor and just a lot of heart all around, and both of those chapters showcased all of those things that I just said. I did especially really love chapter 47, where we get to see what is probably and hopefully going to be our next adorable couple, and I really like them, and it also dove into trying to move on from your past and just analyzing your past in general, and there were some really great and honestly like helpful in real life illustrations in there, and I feel like it just has to be one of my favorite chapters from this series so far, and chapter 48 was cute as well, so yeah. No complaints here. Next up is a book that I listened to on audio, and that book was Salt Houses by Hala Alyan. Before our main character's wedding, or in this case, one of our main characters, she has her fortune read in a cup of coffee dregs by her mother. It is then that her mother sees travel, luck, and an unsettled life for her daughter and her family ahead of her, which is something that she chooses to keep to herself that day. However, her predictions soon come true when her family is uprooted by the Six-Day War of 1967. I love the structure of this story and how we got to follow the different point of views from each generation of this family that the story follows, and you do really feel just the time that passes in between each generation switch. It was really easy to get lost in and invested in these characters, and because the story covers so much time, it really felt weird to not keep following them after the story was over. The characters were all really complex and at times unlikable, but also very likable at the same time. Their stories were filled with so many heartbreaking moments and so many difficulties, but also a lot of light and a lot of love between the family members. And also because of how much time the story covers, you get a lot of insight into the history and also more present day politics and all the hardships and heartbreak that causes them and also those around them. I do wish that we got to spend more time with some of the characters in here. There are characters that I would have liked to have gotten to know better and follow some more. But I also do like what this book did, and I like how the ending left it open so that it feels like their lives are still continuing on even though the book is over, which both helped with that weird feeling that I mentioned earlier of not following this family anymore, but also made it so much worse. And I ended up giving Salt Houses 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is Our Dining Table by Mita Ori. This is a BL manga that follows our main character who has a talent for cooking but has always struggled to eat around others. That is until he meets two brothers who are many years apart in age who ask him to teach them how to cook. After this, it's not long before our main character finds himself falling in love with the meals that they share together and also falling in love just in general. I planned to read this book over the summer last year, and that didn't happen, but I think that might have been for the best, because I got to read this on a very snowy day, where I just wanted something cute and cozy, and this was cute and cozy. It's a very simple story, with a romance that did feel insta-lovey to me, but also still managed to have some really solid emotional moments and a pretty good deep dive into our main character's past. And the romance did have its fair share of cute moments. I just would have liked this book to have been a little bit longer, so that we could have spent more time in the getting together portion of the relationship. But do I really care about any of that? No. Like I said earlier, it did what I wanted it to do, but I did notice it, and I gave our dining table 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Squire by Sara Alfageeh and Nadia Shammas. This is a graphic novel that follows our 14-year-old main character who has always dreamt of becoming a knight, and since the Empire is on the brink of war, she can finally enlist in the Squire training program. She then finds herself at a camp where she must hide her true background while also navigating friendships, rivalries, and intense training. First and foremost, I would love to watch an animated version of this, but honestly, the graphic novel brought these characters and the story fully to life all on its own. I really loved and adored the art style, and it helped to create just a really fun fantasy atmosphere that really spoke to me, especially at the time that I read it, because I wanted a story like this, and this book gave that to me. And the story itself was also just really solid. It's a little bit on the tropey side of things, but it does what it does very well, and even the familiarity of it felt good and even fun at times. I do wish that there was a little bit more world building and maybe even some more volumes to keep following the characters, but I did really like this, and I gave Squire 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up are 3 Shonen Jump manga series that I try my best to keep up with weekly, and first up is Kagurabachi. This follows our main character Chihiro, who is the son of a renowned swordsmith, when he sets out with one of the last of his father's magical swords on a quest for vengeance against a villainous group. I read chapters 15 through 18 this month, which means that I am now caught up again, and we will see how long that lasts for. But this is a series that I have a lot of hope for. That being said, this hasn't been my favorite arc, and I'm also just a little bit conflicted about their introduction of their shonen power system, and even the world building can also kind of fall into this, where I just feel like it gets a little bit info dumpy at points, and like it's trying to throw a lot at me quickly, which can feel overwhelming at points, but it's also something that I feel like will work itself out in my brain eventually. I like the characters, I like how they're balancing their edginess and darkness with their humor and their heart, and I also do like their art style. I don't know, I just feel like they have a lot of potential. I'm rooting for them, and I'm excited to see where they go, because hopefully they're going somewhere. Next up is Akane-banashi, which follows our main character, Akane, who is diving into the Rakugo world to chase her dream of becoming the highest rank that she can, and also avenge her father after he was expelled from the Rakugo world when she was younger. I read chapters 92 through 95 this month, and again, all caught up. I feel like I've been in a little bit of a slump with this series that I didn't even really notice until these chapters, because I started to get really into this series again with these chapters, which is exciting because I've been reading this series for a while now, and I do really like them. And there are things that are starting to get exposed that's making everything feel complex and interesting. I'm really loving the characters as well, especially our main character, but that's always the case. It's fun, and I think that's only going to get better from here based on the most recent chapter. Next up is Blue Box, which follows our main character, who is a badminton player who falls for a girl on the basketball team, and it's this girl who inspires him to try and get to nationals. I read chapters 131 to 134 this month, and out of the 4 manga series that I've been following, I think this is the one that's had the best month for me. And I do think that this series in general has had some really good chapters lately. I didn't even realize that I liked the romance as much as I do until these past few chapters. And I also didn't expect this series to make me feel emotional, but they also managed to do that. And the reason why is spoilery, so I'll leave that there. But this is definitely one of my favorite series that I'm reading right now, and probably the one that I'm excited to read most next week, which is saying something. Next up is Volume 1 of Whisper Me a Love Song by Eku Takeshima. This follows our main character Himari, who falls in love with her upperclassman Yori. After hearing her band perform on the first day of school, she confesses, and this girl confesses back. And then Himari realizes that they are feeling 2 different kinds of love and begins to wonder what love really means. This is a series that I really want to get into before the anime adaptation comes out, and this volume was an adorable start. Like, they do heavily rely on the misunderstanding in this this volume for their humor, which at times can feel a little bit repetitive, but they also do have some really fun and cute moments too. I also just really like Yuri as a character. She's definitely my favorite so far, and her friends have also been super fun. This volume also has some really amazing color pages, and I want more of them, so that just made me extra excited for their anime adaptation, because based on this, I think it's going to be a really good time. Whisper Me a Love Song is at a 4.25 out of 5 stars for me right now. I own 2 more volumes and will probably be hauling more very soon. Next up is Something More by Jackie Khalilieh, and this follows our main character after she is diagnosed with autism right before the start of her first year of high school. With a fresh start ahead of her, she makes a list of goals that she wants to accomplish. However, she soon finds herself in a situation she never expected. A very love triangle-y situation, if you couldn't tell from the cover. This was very tropey, very cheesy, very fun. These characters do make a lot of mistakes and are at times extremely frustrating. And on one hand, they're young and they're teenagers, so I get that. But on the other hand, I do think that this was just too frustrating at times, to the point where I just felt tired, especially when it comes to a certain love interest who I did not like at all from the very beginning of the book. This book is filled with a lot of tropey YA drama. It's messy, but that's what I wanted from this book, and that's what I went into this book expecting, and it delivered. That being said, this book has a lot of heart put into it and a lot of heart within the story itself, and I also did really like and root for our main character, and I really appreciated her growth and also just her journey, especially by the end, and I really did love the ending and the romance that we ended with. It took a lot to get there, but they did have some really cute moments, and I really like them, and I ended up giving Something More 3.75 out of 5 stars. Next up is Monsters by Eiichiro Oda. This is a 46-page one-shot that has recently gotten a Netflix anime adaptation, and it follows a samurai who stumbles into a town that will soon face off against a dragon. I read this because I was looking for something new and something kind of different to read other than the manga series that I was already reading, and also the adaptation had just recently come out, which I haven't watched yet, but probably will. I am not the biggest One Piece fan, to say the least, which is also by this author, if you did not know. I'm caught up to their anime. There are times where I really like them, and then there are times where I think it's a hate, actually. I actively hate them. So it's quite the time that I've had with that series, and will also continue to have with that series, because I'm too far in to turn back now. But none of that really matters when it comes to this one-shot, because, like, you can tell it's from this creator. But I also do think that this one-shot highlights a lot of the things that I actually do like about his work. Like, I enjoyed the art style. It felt kind of nostalgic, that I really liked from early One Piece. And it had a pretty good twist as well, and yeah, I did like this. I don't think I need to see it go any further than this, but for what it was, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So after reading Monsters, I started going full force at one of my reading goals from last year, which was to catch up to and or finish at least 5 manga series before the year ends. And in 2023, I was 1 for 5 on that goal, so we're gonna try again this year. And first up is Jujutsu Kaisen. This follows a high schooler who spends his days with the occult club and visiting his hospitalized grandfather. However, he soon gets exposed to the world of curses when he unknowingly encounters a cursed item, of which he then ends up swallowing. This item ends up being the finger of the king of curses, and with these newfound powers that the finger gives him, he is enrolled in the Tokyo Prefectural Jujutsu High School, where he begins his journey of becoming a Jujutsu sorcerer. I read a little bit into Volume 4 in 2023, so I started there, and then I read through Volume 9, which is actually the start of the Shibuya incident arc, and I'm already feeling the pain from just the thought of going through that again after watching the anime. But I'm going to do it, because this is a manga series that I've been wanting to catch up to for a really long time, because I've only ever heard incredible things about it, and I also, of course, really love the anime. And I do get why everyone is always saying how incredible the manga is. These were very good volumes, to say the least, and I feel even more attachment to these characters than I started with, which shouldn't be possible, but it is. And the series is definitely sitting at a 5 out of 5 right now, and I'm sure that they'll keep that rating. Next up is Kaiju number 8, which follows our main character who wants to chase his dream of defeating Kaiju alongside his childhood best friend. He missed out on this promise once already, but when the time comes for him to chase his dreams again, he ends up gaining the power to turn into a Kaiju and has to try to navigate that. I read a couple of chapters of this in 2023 on a day where I just wanted something new, new. And I did really enjoy those chapters, but this did just unfortunately just get pushed to the side for other things. But just like Whisper Me a Love Song, this also has an adaptation coming out soon. I read the first 3 volumes this month, and I am just really loving this series right now. I love the art style, these characters, and especially the action scenes just look so clean and so amazing. And speaking of characters, this does have a large cast of them, but everyone feels super well developed, and I really like all of them, and I really love watching them interact. Some of it is your basic shonen rivalry banter, but they're also making that work. And on that note, I do think that they have some really good humor. There are also some really complex relationships as well. It's a little bit of Demon Slayer and a little bit of Attack on Titan, and it is quickly becoming a huge favorite of mine. So yeah, they're a 5-star right now, and I don't know that I expected that. I've been alternating between this and Jujutsu Kaisen in terms of volumes, and it's just been an amazing time. The last book that I finished in the month of January is Hunting by Stars by Cherie Dimaline, which is the sequel to The Marrow Thieves. The Marrow Thieves takes place in a world where most of humanity has been destroyed by global warming, and the indigenous people of North America are being hunted and harvested for their bone marrow, as it contains the key to resolving why the rest of the population is not able to dream. This follows our main character Frenchie as he and his companions struggle to run and survive with the goal of making it to the north. I was a little bit worried about this book at first because I do think that it had a little bit of a slow and maybe even kind of a basic start, but by the time that I got to the second half of it, I was fully back in this story. And something that I will be forever loving and saying about this series is that it will get you fully attached to all of the characters in this family. And that was fully the case again in this book. They go through so much, and that sounds like an understatement. The character that stood out to me most in this book, though, was Rose. And I loved her chapters and just her character as a whole. I said in my review of this book that she is my new favorite, and that is mostly true. And just like book 1, this is a story that is set in the future and does have fantasy elements, but it also contains atrocities that reflect today's society in terms of how indigenous people have been and are treated. This story is also an apocalypse story, and it contains both your typical apocalypse stuff, but it also has some really compelling concepts mixed in with that as well, which those things combined with an already solid storyline made for a really interesting read once we got there. And I of course have to mention the found family aspect of this story because it's just one of my favorite things that the series does. You really feel the love that they have for each other, and I also really love the love that they have for each other. It's just so heartwarming and amazing all around. I went through so many emotions while reading this. I'm not sure that I like this book as much as I liked the first one, but I do think that I liked it about the same. So I gave Hunting by Stars 4.25 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer the question that'll be around here if you want to do that, and hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye!